Hey, Mr. Traeger here. Today we're talking about how to be able to get help for some friends or a friend that may be dealing with some depression, maybe dealing with some suicide issues, or maybe even you yourself are dealing with some major depression or sometimes in your life where you don't really know exactly what to do. You're starting to get some of these crazy thoughts in your head. You're starting to think about, focus on or obsess over, maybe my life doesn't have meaning, or maybe it doesn't matter whether I'm here or not. And I'm here to tell you that it does. And those things are going to make a big impact on a lot of people that you would never want to go through anything like that. And your friends are the same way. And so a lot of times you're the first line of defense to be able to um, bring those issues to light to somebody who can really help them and that they can thrive. Right? If we look here, I got a look at that right there, thriving family. That's what we want to do. So we want to thrive. We don't just want to survive. We want to thrive. So that's actually going to be the word of today. So here's what I want you to do. Those of you watching this podcast, um, I want you to come into class and say, hey, the word of today is thrive. And then we'll see what happens. All right. So there's my challenge to you. All right. So today we're talking about the four-step action plan, how to intervene to get help. So that's what our focus is going to be today. There we go. Four-step action plan. There's only four steps we need to really pay attention to. It's really simple. And the whole idea here is not for us to become suicide counselors. We're not trying to fix their problem. We're not trying to solve the issue. We're trying to get them connected to a organization, a person, someone that's got more skills and more understanding than what we do. So let's take a look at what the first step is. The first step is really simple. Most people do it without even thinking about it. Is that they're available. All right, and simply all that means is just continue being a friend. All the things that you've been doing, hanging out with them, asking them questions, talking to them, calling them on the phone, texting them, all those things, just normal things. Don't be afraid of hanging out with them. Be a friend and be there for them. All right, that's the first. That's the first step. Is be available. All right, be around. The next step is don't be afraid to ask the big question. Now you might be saying, well, what is the big question? Well, not to freak you out, but the big question is are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about, if you're getting red flags that are saying this person's dealing with some major depression and I'm getting freaked out, don't be afraid to ask them about it. Say, hey, you're really scaring me right now. There's some things going on. I'm really worried about you, and it sounds like this is what you're thinking about. And it sounds like you're thinking about maybe committing suicide or thinking about killing yourself. Is that really what's going on? Because you want to know exactly where you stand. You don't want to be guessing and wondering and hoping that they're not. Ask them the question. A lot of people think, well, if I ask them the question, I'm going to give them the idea. I mean, folks, come on. Before I started talking about this unit, you guys knew what suicide was. It wasn't like I just planted the idea in your head. People either have already dismissed it, it's not an option for them, or they're not sure, or they're thinking about it and it's on their their radar in terms of an option. And you're not going to give them the idea. It's not like they're going to be dealing with a situation like a boyfriend girlfriend breaks up with him. You're like, well, you think about suicide? And like, oh man, I never thought of that. Maybe I should start thinking about that. I mean, people don't do that. All right, so you're not going to put the idea in their head. All right, you want to find out what's really going on, in their brain. All right, and so that's why don't be afraid to ask that question. If that's what you think is going on, be direct. Sometimes they might even be relieved because finally somebody notices the seriousness of what's going on. All right, so the second step, don't be afraid to ask that question. All right. Third, don't be afraid to ask how. If they answer, I don't know, if they answer yes, ask them, what are you thinking about doing? What is it you're thinking about? Now, it doesn't matter what they say. We're not really concerned about critiquing their method. We're not really concerned about, if they're, and I hate that word serious when it comes to suicide because we're not really checking to see if they're serious or not. But what we are checking for is we're checking for urgency. All right. Now, urgency refers to how quickly do I need to spring into action? And that's what this question is really determining. How much thought have they put into this? I mean, what is it that they're really thinking about? The whole idea of are they serious or not? I mean, if you're asking these questions, it's a serious situation. There's something seriously going on. So it's not about seriousness, it's about urgency. How quickly do I need to respond? And here's a couple kind of a guideline or a couple things you can think about in terms of what your goal is with that question. And I use the acronym of be a pal. And what that means is that when you ask them what they're thinking about doing, you want to try to identify, do they have a plan in place? Is it specific? The more specific the plan, the more urgent the situation. It's one thing for a person to say, yeah, maybe I'll take a bunch of pills. It's another thing for a person to say, when my parents leave to go play cards with my aunt and uncle on Tuesday nights, I'm going to go to mom's medicine cabinet and get all of her sleeping pills and take them all. I mean, that's a much more specific plan than just saying, I don't know, I'll take some pills. All right. And so you're kind of thinking about, what kind of answers they're giving you in terms of specifics for that plan. All right. So that's P. The next thing we're looking for is the plan available? Do they have access to whatever they're talking about doing? So in that case, as she was talking about taking pills, are the pills there? I mean, she said it was in mom's medicine cabinet, so evidently in that scenario, the plan's available. If they talk about, they're going to use a gun or something like that, do they have one? Those are things that we're trying to establish, and those may be follow-up questions if they say something like, you know, I'll just, use a shotgun. Well, do you have it? Do you have one? No, well, I could get one, and that's true, but it's a lot different if they say no, I don't have one, or versus they say yeah, there's one in my closet. I mean, that tells you a little bit something about what's really going on. So, do they have what they need available to them? And then lastly, is what they're planning on lethal? Is what they're going to do going to actually cause them serious bodily harm or cause them to die? All right. Obviously, they're talking about handguns. They're talking about sleeping pills. They're talking about things like that. I mean, those are lethal things. Now maybe they don't know. They don't have a plan. They haven't really put a lot of thought into this, and they just say something like they're going to overdose on Flintstone vitamins or something like that. And as funny as that sounds, Flintstone vitamins aren't lethal. They're gonna make you sick. But how much of a jump is it from Flintstone vitamins to sleeping pills, or from Flintstone vitamins to a lethal dose of some kind of medication? All right, it's not a big jump. So it's not that we want to say, well, they're not really serious if they're talking about Flintstone vitamins. It's just that they haven't put a lot of thought into it. But that's what we're trying to determine is how lethal, the lethality of what their plan is. All right, and so those are the three things that we're looking for, and it tells me the difference between whether I should call someone, make an appointment with a counselor right now to go get some help for them, or whether it's I can talk to them after school. I can maybe sit down and talk with my parents and get some ideas of what I need to do because there's some things going on. Maybe talk with their parents. Maybe set up an appointment with a youth pastor or something like that. It just gives me a timeline of is this immediate, or is it something that I can kind of start setting up? All right, and that's what this third step is asking that question and being a pal and trying to find out, do they have a plan, is it available, and is it lethal? And then lastly, the most important one is to get help. That's the biggest thing. I mean, don't just go through all this stuff and then just kind of just hope it goes away. Get help. And we've talked about this in class already in terms of resources. And so what we're looking for are responsible adults that we trust. They're going to be people that have a little bit more experience, a little bit more skill in recognizing things and knowing what to do. They may not have as much of a vested interest as you. If your best friend's acting this way, it's going to be pretty freaky to most adults. Yeah, it's going to be serious to them, but they're not going to have the same kind of I guess emotional investment in your friend as you are. Or it's going to be different, in terms of your parents. Your parents, I'm sure, care about your friends, but they care about them in a different way than you do. So responsible adults. It sounds like my daughter's pumpkin seeds are done. The next one is professionals. That's going to be your therapists, your counselors, teachers, guidance counselors, um, you know, anyone in those kinds of professions, a pastor at church, or someone like that, someone that you can talk to and sit down and explain, hey, here's what's going on, and I don't know what to do. It's a way to bounce some ideas off and get someone involved that knows what they're doing. And then lastly, we talked about hotlines a little bit in class, and so I wanted to put up here the national hotline. There's lots of them. There's some local ones. I didn't put those on there just for time's sake. 1-800-SUICIDE is a very common national hotline. I put the numbers down there below. If you want, plug that into your phone. Let your parents know that you're doing that, so if they run across your phone, they see you got the suicide hotline in there, they don't freak out. But let them know you're putting it in here because we're talking about health class, and that way you have it hands down available if something were to arise and you need it. Now, hotlines are something you can use as a way to get resources and support for yourself, but it's also if you're dealing with some depression and you don't know what to do about it and you don't know who to talk to, people on the other end of that line are trained in dealing with both of those situations. So don't be afraid to call a hotline number and use that as a tool or a jump start into knowing how you can get some help for your friend or how you can get some help for yourself. All right. So quick and easy, those are the 4 steps. that we're talking about in terms of intervention. And don't let them try to do stuff by themselves. They're already feeling lonely. They're already feeling like nobody cares. To tell them that they need to call a hotline, to tell them that they need to talk to a counselor, and expect them to do that on their own is probably not going to happen. Think about if I were to tell you, say, hey, why don't you go talk to your counselor? Some of you may not even know who your counselor is at school. But what if I were to say, how about you and I go set up an appointment with your counselor, and I'll go with you. I'll sit in there with you. I don't care. Let's call the hotline number. I'll talk to him first, and then when you're ready, I'll just give you the phone. Let's go sit down and talk to your parents. I'll go with you. I'll start the conversation. That's a much more attractive offer if someone goes with you than if you have to try to do it by yourself. You write that phone number down and hand it to somebody and say, here, call this number tonight. They're probably not going to do it. But if you call them and all you have to do is hand them the phone, they're much more likely to take advantage of that opportunity. So don't let them go by themselves. You take the initiative to go with them, and when they're ready, they'll tell you, okay, I can do this. And then you don't have to be there, and you can just worry about being the friend. You don't have to worry about being the therapist anymore. And so that's a very important piece to this whole idea of getting help, is that you're being part of the solution. You're not just telling them that they just have to go do it on their own. All right? So the 4 steps: be available. Don't be afraid to ask the question. Don't be afraid to try to ask some extra questions for urgency. What they're going to do. Be a pal, plan, available, and lethal. And then don't forget to get help. Now, if I don't feel comfortable with the middle 2 steps, I can always be their friend. And if I'm freaked out, go get help. Get someone involved right away. I don't have to go through those middle steps if I don't feel comfortable. But those are a very quick strategy that we can use to be able to bring some resources to some friends or to a friend, to be able to match them up with someone that can help and has more skills, more resources, more experience than we do, so that we can really be effective in helping our friends deal with this issue of depression and suicide. All right? That's all I got. Make sure you log into Kia, get your quiz done, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Get some good sleep tonight, and we'll talk in the morning.